Mm. Let me just get rid of that little guy. Hey, Sophie, great to see you.
Lovely to see you too. What's the weather like?
Cape Town is windy, but it's sunny.
Uh-huh.
What's it?
Yeah, I
What's it
hate
like your
you.
side?
I
Yeah.
hate you officially. It is, I think we've got the end of Storm Claudia, and it is lashing down. It is very different to being on location, being back at home and going, we need the rain, we need the rain. This is good.
And you're in Bristol. I know you're in London, right? You're based in London.
Correct. Yeah, I'm one of the rare wildlife people who isn't based out of Bristol. In the UK, Bristol is absolutely the heart of everything, but I'm in London.
Okay, fantastic.
Mm.
Well, yeah, it's crazy because we sort of bumped into each other in airports en route to with the Falklands, I think it was, but never really had an opportunity to work together. Unfortunately, maybe there'll be a
Yeah,
chance down the line. But yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat, and I guess
pleasure.
it's a great way for me also to kind of get to know you a bit better. So, I've done quite a bit of research, and I'll do a little intro to you before, we jump into our conversation. But one of the things that really intrigues me is you talk about how you got into the industry, and there was it was the mentoring, but what was it that fundamentally? Because I kind of got into the industry, sort of almost by mistake, as it were. With you, was
Hmm.
it something that was very intentional as a young girl,
No,
or
not
how did that
intentional.
happen? Not.
It wasn't intentional at all. I think that, like you, Roger, I think I had an innate, absolute passion for nature, outdoors. I grew up in incredible places with beautiful light. Light has always been my thing. That's always been my trigger. I'm like, if I see good
Okay.
light, it's sort of it has a physical effect on me. But I didn't grow up going, that's what I want to do. I mean, I remember watching Life on Earth, and there were 13 shows, weren't there? So every week there was no binging, you had to wait. And I remember watching them and being amazed by Attenborough in the late 70s, but it wasn't like, oh, this is something I can do. It really never presented itself until I met a BBC film crew when I volunteered in Tanzania at a safari lodge for a couple of years when I was like 19 or so. And I met Keith Scoley and Hugh Miles, who were two of the they were both sort of young men. And they were making a show called The Great Rift. And I remember looking at what they were doing, and it was sort of like a jigsaw puzzle, sort of all suddenly coming together and going, oh, okay, so you can love nature, you can love photography, which I do, you can love light, blooming heck, you can travel the world, you can come here and work, and I want your job, I want your job. So it was really when it was presented in front of me. It's why I do talks at schools now, because I think that you don't know what's possible, do you? Until it's put until it's put right in front of you. So it wasn't an intentional thing, but when I got the bit between my teeth, I just went for it. I kind of like, okay, now I know. Now what do I do? And they said, you've got to go to university, you've got to go to film school. And I'm not the academic type, I'm afraid. I learn by watching, by doing, and I've always been really scared of formal tertiary education, I think. And so I bided my time. I just kept on working really hard at anything I could do. I worked on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for like 2 years. Honestly, that was the closest to wildlife I could get. But I worked on that just to try and get myself into a position when the opportunity arose that I could jump at it. And the opportunity was to be a camp manager for Hugo van Lawick, the
Okay.
famous wildlife cinematographer who was married to Jane Goodall. And I went and spent the first year I ordered a lot of carrots over a radio, made a lot of coffee, did all the jobs, any jobs, because you just do anything. But I kind of proved that I was turning up, I was ready, I was inquisitive. But what about you? How did you, because you weren't formally into it either, so how did you get into it?
Sophie, it's intriguing because it's such strong parallels. When I was at school, there was no such, it wasn't an option, right? Lawyer, doctor, accountant.
Yeah.
But very similar to me. I had a number of passions. I was passionate about the ocean, passionate about free diving and spearfishing, very passionate about big ideas and concepts, and and very got into digital as well. So it was a very similar thing to me when I got a job on the Sardine Run with Hugh Pearson, and
Oh,
suddenly
great.
this aha moment. Didier Noiro, Jacques Cousteau's
Oh,
cameraman,
amazing.
digital, boats, ocean. It's like, wow. And exactly like you, it was maniacal focus. This is what I want to do. I want to, so yeah, very similar experience.
Fantastic. It's you've got to see it to be it, as you know, it's very well said, but you really do. You've got to kind of go, sometimes it's not there in front of you. And when it is,
What's
you're like,
your,
oh, hello, I'll have that.
yeah, I'm intrigued. I picked up, what is your relationship to sort of authority? How do you like it? Because I'm very intrigued there on some similarities. Do you like being told what to do?
Actually, sometimes yes and sometimes no. It really depends on the circumstances. I think certainly at school, it was a big no. I was not great at school and I definitely rebelled against it. And my education speaks for that. But with the right people, hell
Yeah.
yeah. If you've got Alistair McEwen telling you, Soph, move that bucket, I'm 23 and there he is and he's setting up a jib shot, move that bucket, do this, no problem at all. So it was like with a creative end in sight. I I love it. I think I'm most probably quite rule abiding now. I'm quite, I'm always I hate breaking cues. I don't like, I'm pretty well behaved, I think, but I like working, collaborating is my favorite thing. So
I
it's
think
less of the you do that, it's like, shall we do this? That I love.
I think you did right. As you get older, you so do appreciate the richness of multiple perspective. It's one of the things that I've missed in a way as I've become more trusted as a camera operator, DOP, is that you don't have the producer in the field with you as much.
Yeah.
So, and that I miss that collaboration, right? I miss that stimulation. It can sometimes get a bit tricky where it's like, do I really want to film it? I mean, of course, we're underwater, right? So the director can't speak to you, which is a benefit. But
Yeah, lucky you.
I don't know if you've experienced that as well at all in your career as it progressed.
Absolutely. I think that I've been very lucky. I've always worked by myself and I've always had people who really trusted me when I'm working. With Hugo, he never sat on my shoulder. We'd all sit down and watch rushes together, and that was a hugely important part of learning. But we never, he'd never sit there and go, do this, do that. He would look at the rushes and go, why did you do this? Why did you do that? To a point now that I actually find it very hard to be directed. I remember very clearly Chad and Hunter being in the car with me for, I'm trying to remember what show it was, doesn't matter. But lovely Chadden, who's the nicest man in the world. And he's sitting there and he's like, could you frame it a bit more like this? And you could frame it a bit. And the filming was just appalling. It really was. It was grim. And after I'd done it for about, I'd given it a go, but I could feel that I just wasn't getting it and it wasn't great. And I just went, Chadden, would you mind? And fair play to him, he let me. I said, could you just give me a moment to try and show you what I can see and what I can do? And he was like, yeah, of course, which was brilliant. And then he went, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. Fine, you're good. So we're looking for, this is the point we want to illustrate. And I'm sure you have that too. This is the point we want to illustrate. How would you do that? Because that's why they're employing you for your eye and your interpretation of a story. It's not another, you don't need us if they want to just do their own thing. But Chadden was great and we got some really beautiful shots. But it hit me just sort of like, please, would you mind? So no, I'm not particularly good at being directed, I don't think.
And I call it the Bristol style, which is, and by the Bristol style, I'm talking about the style of cinematography that evolved primarily, I guess, through the NHU, Natural History Unit.
Oxford film, scientific
Oxford,
films.
correct. Which, in a sense, has evolved into what we call blue chip, right? And what is your understanding of the term blue chip? Where does that come from?
Ha! Isn't that interesting? That's such a great question. Blue chip, what on earth? I mean, yeah, we know that it means with nobody in screen, just the animals and a kind of voice of God talking over incredible footage. But what does blue chip? I mean, I think blue chip comes from other terms too. I'm going to have to Google it. But I think it means sort of pure. But
Yeah.
it's a good question. I'd never thought about it.
I think it comes from gambling, where blue chip in the casino is a very high value chip. I think that's where it comes from.
Is
That's my
it?
understanding. Yeah, that's my understanding of what blue
Perfect.
chip
I
is.
love it. Well, hopefully people will join in after this podcast and put us both straight.
But how do you? I mean, that evolution, which is, as you mentioned, is, and I believe it was wasn't it Alistair Fothergill who kind of was the father of blue chip in the sense that he made the decision to not have Sir David, in Ocean in Blue Planet. I think Blue Planet was the first series that Sir David wasn't actually on location, and the problem was, of course, because he couldn't be. Right, it's all underwater.
Yeah, well, Alistair has some really good stories about, nearly killing David, actually. I
Right,
seem to
underwater.
remember, yeah, but underwater, sort of, David being put in a pool to kind of do a bit of comm, and the helmet slowly filling up with water, and Alistair's like, oh my God, I've nearly killed Sir David Attenborough, back in the day, obviously. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Alistair was such a pioneer, wasn't he? The youngest ever head of the NHU, and yeah, extraordinary visionary, and definitely, I think, led natural history filmmaking. But you've also got to remember that it took me 25 years to get into the NHU. It was a hard old beast to break.
So what? So was that because you were a woman? Was it because? And what was the? I mean, it's just. It's.
No,
I mean, look,
I
it's
think it
difficult.
was.
It's difficult regardless, right? I mean, it's incredible whether you. It doesn't matter who you are. I mean, it's insanely difficult to get into that network because it all works on trust, right?
Works on trust and contacts, and it's who you know. And, if you're not based in Bristol, that's one strike against you. If you didn't come up through traditional routes, there's another one. If you came from, as I came from Hugo van Lawick, and I'd worked a lot for Discovery Channel, I'd worked a lot for channels that traditionally weren't the BBC. I always wanted to work for the BBC because it sort of was, the gold standard when I was growing up of wildlife filmmaking. And I remember just writing letters and just getting knockback after knockback. And even when I was nominated for, Patrick Morris directed a film that I mainly shot called The Lion's Share. And it was one of the first films I ever got an opportunity to properly put my style and imprint on. I'd worked with Alistair Fothergill, not Alistair, with Alistair McEwen. I'd worked with Gil Dom, two brilliant camera people. And I'd been their sort of third camera, second camera, but I'd never had my own. And myself, and actually Gus Christie also was on The Lion's Share. But I remember going to Bristol and sitting up on the stage because I got nominated for cinematography, which was an incredibly big deal. But I remember just sitting there knowing nobody, knowing the names of people, but didn't know what they looked like because there was no BTS back then, there was no behind the scenes. And the only person who gave me a job after getting a nomination for cinematography was Natural History New Zealand and Tigress. It was impossible. It was a hard nut to break. And what's funny is I think it most probably is to do with they will, a lot of it comes from recommendations from people they know, which is understandable. A lot of it is, as you say, really tough nut to crack.
I think it's also, I worked in corporate for 10 years. And one of the insights I had there was that often corporations, they don't play to win, they play not to lose. And I think this is the issue with producers. If they take a chance on you, someone who
Yeah.
is, in your case, you were already winning awards, right? But you weren't kind of in the
Well,
mix.
no, nominated.
Nominated. Okay, nominated. Okay, fair enough. But you know what I mean? If they, because remember, when you go into the field as a cinematographer, I mean, these days it's a 200, 300, 400,000 rand shoot that is essentially resting on your shoulders, right, in terms of delivery. So they tend to, rather than take a chance, they tend to, rather back someone. And then if it fails, it's not like they've made a bad decision around who to put in the field, right? I mean, Hugh Pearson, for example, who, as I mentioned earlier, I got into. It took him 11 years to employ me as a lead camera operator.
Wow.
And why? In fairness, why should he? He's got Doug Anderson, he's got Hugh Miller,
Yeah.
he's got incredible. He's got the best of the best.
This is it. As you say, there are people who are trusted, who deliver, who are amazing. Why would they take chances? I think now, because shoots can be slightly, everything's changing. Remember when I started on film, Roger. I was shooting Super 16 and 35mm. And again, so a whole different sort of skill set and a different thing. There was no, if you didn't get the shot, there was no kind of like checking your rushes and going, oh, I missed that shot. You had to get the shot in order to, if you came back from Mongolia with your cans of film and you were missing the shot of the big wide or the tight or whatever it was to make the sequence going long, that was it, Whereas now, one, we can check our rushes daily, but two, you bring in so many different types of tech that you can cover it from different angles. It's so changed the whole, in a great way, I think, in a brilliant way. But it's a very different arena now to when we started, or when I started, certainly.
Yeah, I want to come back to that, but before I ask a question on that, you mentioned starting on film. What I'm very intrigued with is your approach to shooting a sequence and to getting the requisite coverage. And on film, did you make? I mean, are you like a kind of one of those chess masters who remembers all their moves and can remember everything you've shot, or what was your process of ensuring that you came back from a shoot with all the coverage that you required?
I think that the chess analogy is a great one. It's one I often make when I'm out there working, because you are literally, aren't you? When you're working, you're sort of piecing together that puzzle. Have I got the establisher? Have I got the tight? I know that shot won't work, but what can I do to make it work? And I think that I look back at, I have all the rushes on VHS. Which would be a great thing to do one of these days. If it carries on raining, maybe I could do it. But it's sort of, it's brutal. But we were so economical with our film. When you put in, say you're shooting Super 16, if you were shooting at 25 frames a second, you had 8 minutes. That was it. If you were going high speed, you had 4 minutes. And you always had the gamble of, is the film going to run out before the behavior finishes? You were constantly going, right, how much have I got in a magazine? I know I've got 4 minutes left on that one. You've only got 3 mags. And you're and 2 of them are loaded with daylight footage. One is loaded with a slightly faster stock, so you've got 2 with 50D, 1 with 250D. So you've got 3 mags and you're like, oh, okay. And so you're constantly, so I think that my process was, absolutely, all the time, going over it. And now when I shoot, I make rushes, I watch my rushes every single day and I make notes every single day. I do to make sure I haven't missed anything, and if I have, what I need to get that sequence to work. So every single shot is logged in my rushes, because it's my memory's must be less good now. But it is a game of chess. Not only are you sort of like checking the light, your animal, your level, your speed, your gait, your lens, whatever, but you're also going, what should I shoot? What do I need to shoot? And I think we let shots run for longer, which I kind of love. I look back to some of the shots. No, back then we would let shots run because you were no pre-roll. So, if a cheetah's going to hunt, you've got to be ready. But also your zooms were different then as well. We mainly worked on a 50 to 300 Nikon or a Canon 150 to 600. Do you remember those?
Yeah. And
one focused one way and the other focused the other way. So you had to remember which one you were on in terms of focusing. You were like, all that muscle memory. But I remember just sort of like, I can remember shooting a sequence for the lion's share, which was a male lion coming into a female with cubs. And I look at the sequence now and I'm amazed. We got all the shots we needed to make the sequence. And I don't know how we did it. We must have driven around, but we got the shot variation, we got the sequence. I think it's I'm not going to say easier now. Yeah, I am. It's easier now.
Yeah, I think it's easier now. I mean, I think you're getting feedback, and you also don't have that constraint. You can just roll, and it's actually something I do. I remember shooting for Adam and on the Azores bait ball, and just something I really encourage people to do is don't just keep compose, let it roll, and let the action unfold. And then don't just whip pan or whatever, or cut. Just let it roll, because it's one thing to shoot too much, but there's also those lovely, beautiful shots. Didier was brilliant at that. I mean, he really is the master in many ways of the, literally the 3-4 minute shot, which will never get
Do you
used.
think that's different underwater though? Because I think underwater I think that's a really interesting thing, because I read your post on your fabulous Instagram today about, letting it flow. And I think topside, there's less of that, maybe because you've got different constraints, but letting things flow. I am a bugger for turning off. Like, I'll get the shot, turn off, move on. But I think that's a throwback to my film days, but also me doing the jigsaw puzzle. And I've had to really learn now not to turn off. I remember seeing one of Jamie McPherson's shots in The Hunt, which was unbelievably brilliant. And it was that polar bear coming up and going after the seal, and they both leap into the water, and he lets it run. And it runs for almost, you're like, it just isn't stopping. And then they both come up, and you're like, oh, that's good camera work. That's craft. That's really classy. And so I try and do more of it, but I still think a bit of the film aesthetic is back in my head. And I think topside, you do less of the letting it flow in and out. And I can imagine why you would absolutely do that underwater, although I wouldn't even have the faintest idea where to start.
I think you remember underwater, you're so close to the subjects as well. You're so immersed in them that it's often difficult. With the viewfinder, you kind of, they could be coming behind you, and then suddenly they come in front of you again. Whereas with the longer lens Gestalt, it's a different. You can probably.
Do you shoot underwater? You're shooting with a monitor, not with a viewfinder, right?
So yes, 100% a monitor, external monitor. So that's again something that's absolutely critical. So you've got your camera housing, and you've got ideally a 7-inch. So it would be like shooting on a red with a monitor, like a 7-inch monitor.
Sure. When I shoot birds, I shoot with a monitor, because it's impossible to follow a bird with your viewfinder.
Exactly. So, but it's not dissimilar, because what I do is I build quite a long hood. Like the hoods you use on Cineflex. Like
when you're doing Cineflex, yeah.
Exactly. So there's a time where you literally, once you've dialed into the subject, you push your mask against the hood, and then you're completely locked in, as if you were kind of on a viewfinder. And then you dial in. But yeah, you'll often hold a shot and then have a quick glance around, because it's all around you. I mean, that is the magic of underwater. It's all around you.
It must be just incredible. It absolutely. I'm a really poor diver. I've got very bad ear issues. I'm now not allowed to dive, so that's annoying. But I think also I'm left-eyed, and so when I film, as was Owen Newman, as is Ian Llewellyn, as was, I think, possibly even Hugh Miles, I'm not sure. But it's quite unusual, because then you're looking through your viewfinder, and then your other eye is blocked. And so many camera people I know use that other eye to scan around, and all I can see is the camera, which is a bit of a drag. It's sort of, I really rely, if I'm working with people, for instance, Sami Muneni in a car, Sami gives me a constant running commentary of what might be coming into frame or not. And we've even got to know each other well enough. He'll go wide, because he knows, I'll be hunting for a detail, and he knows that I could be on like an inch of fur or an inch of elephant hide, and then he'd be like, no. And so it's really lovely having that trust, but also having those other eyes around you. Do you have that underwater? Someone kind of going, Rog, there's this blue whale coming up.
You do. So if you've got to have someone in the water with you, just for safety purposes, and it's a fine line. So my rule to the assistants is I want you to be invisible. I do not want to see you until I need you. So they're constantly scurrying around trying to keep out of
Of
shot and
course.
things like that. If they get into shot, it's fine. It's not the end of the world. But the more you work with one person, there will be times where yes, they will come and literally tap you on the shoulder, and if there's
Go.
something missing.
Yeah.
But it can be very, very frustrating as well because
Really frustrating.
they're seeing the big picture and you kind of dialed in, and it's
Hmm.
that trade-off. And it's rather like, don't tell me what I missed. I don't want to know. I don't want to
Oh
know.
no, I mean that's the worst thing. And also my absolute least favorite question from anybody else is, did you get it? That
Yeah,
that
yeah,
kills me. It's like, if I get it, I'll tell you. If I didn't get it, you'll know by the expression on my face. Um,
yeah.
you know, you can't get everything. And they're sitting there with that incredible field of view. And as you say, you're dialed in with the minute view. So it's wonderful to work with people you trust, and people who know what information to give you when. And I often find that somebody will come in the car with us, if Sammy and I are working, and they'll start interjecting, and I have to very politely go, if you wouldn't mind, just Sammy and I have got this thing going on, and it really works for us. And it's just because people want to go, oh, there's no, just it's okay, it's all good.
It's actually, you're alluding to something that one of the things I've got heavily into is dual upping. So drones. Drones have become foundational, in ocean cinematography. You can shoot a whole sequence on a drone. And that process of dual upping, where you've got a pilot who's flying, but you working the gimbal, it's like a dance. It's like the two of you having a
Beautiful.
tango.
I've
And
never
when it
done it. I'm
works,
dying to do it.
it's so brilliant, Sophie. I
Yeah,
can't see, the Inspire 3 is just such a phenomenal
yeah,
machine. And
it's
when you've got a
gorgeous.
brilliant, brilliant pilot who can fly backwards and do all these kind of things, and then the two of you are in this kind of,
Zone.
it's really, really worth doing.
Yeah, I've seen some drone footage recently that really disturbed me, and that's something I'd love to talk about. It's sort of and get your thoughts on, because I I feel like we've got all these incredible tools available to us right now, but I'm seeing more and more emphasis on getting the extraordinary shot, and less emphasis on the reason why we're there in the first place, which is because we all love what we do. And I feel like respect is a tricky one right now. And I've seen a lot of, especially FPV footage, where I think that they're just going for the glamour of the shot and the animal be damned. And that really, what do you think of that? Do you think it's okay? Do you think I'm being a little bit like of a lefty liberal?
I don't know. So I mean, it's such a difficult thing in terms of um, you know we've been restricted quite heavily in terms of like flying over bird colonies and things like that because of you've got nesting chicks, and sometimes a drone can cause like a seal stampede, and then there's
Or
the
they think
risk
it's a
to.
predator?
Exactly, so I think there's real issues around that, and that's why the classic kind of blue chip, what I call objective style, the very much the style that I would say is very much personified by Silverback. I mean, there's others as well, but that very much more that objective, reverential take. That was like with our planet, right? Was it our, yeah, our planet was the no, Planet Earth, which was the kind of definitive, helicopter, because then
Yeah,
there were no drones, right? Everything, and there were no
exactly.
gimbals.
Everything was, yeah.
Everything was very much kind of, and then I think it's really gimbal technology in a way, that's been modularized and made small on drones and handheld. That's really kind of, led to this complete, wanting to be super immersed in the thing. So yeah, it can definitely lead to, I think, pushing envelopes that's not optimal for sure.
Yeah, I think that it's great to prioritize. We're cinematographers. We're about the craft. We're about, immersing people, and but I think also we're about setting setting ethical boundaries, whereby we must never put ourselves in front of. I mean, taking it way back to Hugo, I remember sitting with Hugo and I'm going, there's a chameleon going along a bush, and I'm like, just, move the chameleon. And it's like, no, that's not what we do, Soph. We wait. I'm like, oh, okay, fine. And that's what we do. You want a flock of birds to take off, you wait. You don't stand under the tree clapping, and it's which is sort of, that's one way. And it's certainly, I think I got into this because I have such a huge love of wildlife, and I always try and remember that. And I'm very lucky because being a long lens camera woman, I can do that because I can be far away and hopefully I can not affect what's going on. But I really feel that there's quite a lot of sensational footage out there that is actually, it's all about the shot and it's not about the wildlife, which I'm not sure about the messaging on. I understand immersion, and I understand some animals are completely bomb-proof and fine, and you can do whatever you want. But there are other animals who definitely react. And I see on Instagram a giraffe running, and it's so evident, this giraffe is running because the drone has upset it, or a herd of elephants. And I just think that it's an important, the ethics are possibly getting a little lost now with tech.
And are you talking more just across the board in terms of like Instagrammers, etc.? You're talking specifically about the natural history?
I'm talking, I think, ethically across the board. I think that I see, I've been working in East Africa for the last 3.5 years, and I would say almost every single day there's been a moment where my breath has been caught by the behavior of a photographer. Absolutely no interest or not even one moment of thought for the animal. It's all about the shot. And I guess we're partly responsible for that because we've shown them these amazing shots.
Yeah, I mean, that's the paradox, right, of what we do.
Yeah. I don't think there's a solution other than just like, it's always good to try and remind people why we do it in the first place, or remind myself at least. I don't want to be part of the circus. I want to be doing justice to the animals we're taking the time and life of. Oh, I am a bunny hugger.
No, but I mean it's key, and I mean in terms of the industry and just to touch a little bit on that now, I actually want to get back to some questions as well around technique and things. But I mean, just now that we're discussing it, I mean, where do you see? There's clearly been a significant pullback from the streamers at the moment around investment and I think the industry's partly to blame, right? There was just so much of it. And it's, in a way, it's a healthy correction, I think. But where do you see the future of where do you kind of see it going? And if someone is very interested in wildlife and wants to start, documenting things, what would your advice be to them in terms of, going the whole YouTube route or whatever? I mean, what is your
Wow.
what is your
I mean, honestly, the YouTube is so brilliant, and I so don't understand it. I'm a woman of nearly 60, and I think it's absolutely amazing. I love watching it. I think the content creators are inspiring and fantastic, and so inventive and innovative. So I'm really excited by all of that. It's a really interesting one. My advice, first of all, I said on another podcast that that it was, we had made too much stuff, and it wasn't, people are possibly bored. I don't think that's true. I've thought about that. I think it's also that our work has long-lasting effect on. Are you still there?
I think I've lost you, Soph. I just see a big S, like a super. There we go.
Okay, am I back?
You're back. You're back.
I'm back. Okay, right. We'll start that bit again.
No, I heard you. I just couldn't see you.
You heard
but
you.
maybe start again. Start again.
Okay, so I'm back. essentially, I don't think that people are bored of wildlife, or maybe bored. Maybe there's a little bit of jadism. Maybe people are slightly jaded because they're seeing the same thing over and over again. And I understand that. But I also think that there's an awful lot of amazing stuff out there already that people can revisit. If you want to watch The Hunt, you can still watch The Hunt. And it was almost 10 years ago, you know, and incredible, beautiful footage that has huge shelf value. So I'm really interested to see how the industry will go, and looking at things like Underdogs, which I've seen a bit of, and it's funny and, you know, a different approach. I find that really refreshing. I think YouTube is extraordinary, and the creators are doing this job of engaging people who wouldn't be engaged. So I think the future is there, and for people who want to get into it, there's never almost been an easier time to access our industry and to get in and make films on your own terms, because you don't have to be employed by a big streamer now. You don't have to be employed by the BBC or Silverback. You can just go ahead and make your own shows. And I think that as long as you're not replicating what's gone before. So if you're bringing in a new voice, a new interpretation, a new story, a new way of telling a story, there's apparently a brilliant show, I've yet to see it, called The Listers on YouTube. And it's about bird watching, and it has animation as well as blue chip footage. And it's like they've just created something new. That's the way we're going, I think. I don't know. I think it's all about stories. I mean, you were involved in one of the most influential stories with the biggest Trojan horses of all time, you know, for wildlife. Octopus Teacher, how many people stopped eating octopus because of that film?
Yeah.
But you never said it once.
Yeah.
And it's just a great, great story. It's about story, isn't it? As long as we
No,
don't
I mean,
lose sight of that.
100%. I mean, it is. And it's interesting because I saw a comment that you made about Mark's Swiss Teacher being a love story. And I was actually chatting to Craig the other day. We were sort of thinking of doing a podcast which unpacks the road to Mark's Swiss Teacher. And, you know, he mentioned, which was interesting to me, he said, Mark's Swiss Teacher is about belonging.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's why it also hit so many nerves, because it
Resonated.
transcended the genre, and it was like, do we belong to this planet? You know, where do we belong? Like, what is,
Yeah.
and that's when it really gets exciting, is when you are able to sort of transcend the particular genre. And I think,
Well, to make
you know,
people, as you say, where do we belong, and to draw those parallels between the animal kingdom, which of course we're all a part of, you know, we forget that, we other it. And so to tell the stories that make people remember that they are part of it, and the absolute magical brilliance of the planet, you know, its resilience, its beauty, and the behaviors that still just are where we should use the word awesome, aren't they? That's the correct use of awesome, not for a coffee, but for natural,
no,
the natural world.
no, absolutely. Just jumping back a little bit, we've still got a bit of time. I remember seeing Jamie's footage of Wild Dogs.
Yeah.
I was sitting at one of the offices and just being absolutely blown away. And you were very much involved in that, the evolution of the visual language using, you know, basically gimbal mounted systems on.
I don't think I
What?
was, actually. I wish I could say I was, but I don't think I was. I think that I was around at the same time.
Right.
But I've been absolutely a strict long lenser, but I've watched and
Okay.
witnessed the evolution and the excitement of seeing people like Tom Walker and Jamie and Bertie Gregory using this thing and like it becoming part of them. And I find that incredibly exciting, because it is, and Mark McEwen, another maestro, you know, these people who are so brilliant at I had a go during lockdown and I loved it. I was really surprised. I thought I'd hate it. And actually, because I'm not a gamer, but it actually turns out to be the fact it's about a long lens and moving a long lens, which I, of course, can do really.
Yeah.
I really enjoy doing. And I love doing it. And I only had like a week in Zambia doing it, or Zimbabwe, and it was fantastic. But I made a choice not to try and pursue it, because I want to just I've got this one thing that I do that I actually live for.
Okay.
And that's the long lens work is for me, but I love doing it. If someone said, do you want another go? I'd absolutely be up for it. Didn't
And I mean,
pioneer that. Sorry.
given my kind of audience is very, obsessed with cinematography and that sort of thing, one thing I really wanted to ask you was, what is your, like, when you, let's say for example, you're sitting in your vehicle, you see a lion coming up, or you see a cheetah, for example, the thing's sitting, and then suddenly it gets up, and your instinct is right, it's going to hunt. What is your How do you break that sequence down? I mean, I know it's intuitive, right? Because I mean, for me, it's very intuitive, and but if you think about what kind of intentional decisions are you making as that action unfolds in terms of your process, or is it just
It's very,
intuitive?
you know what, it's really evolved and changed, and it really depends on the project you're working for. So if you're working on something like Our Planet 2 and you've got to get a sequence, that's what is at the forefront. It's about how do we get the sequence? Do I have, say it's, let's take the Our Planet 2 sequence with the Gentoo penguins and the leopard seal. So Bertie
Yeah.
Gregory underwater with the leopard seal, flying the drone from the leopard seal, and I was topside with the long lens doing some long lens bits. My priority was to make sure that we had a storyboard, and I know you discussed this with Ollie Scully the other day, and I thought that was a really interesting discussion. But we had a storyboard because we knew we have to come home with a sequence, and my process is, where are we? Always that's that thing. Where are we in the world? Why are we? So what? And if you're doing a sequence, it's usually about a certain piece of behavior. What is the animal? Why is that lion hunting? Is it hunting because there's a storm? Is it hunting because, well, lions are opportunists, so that's a ridiculous statement. But what are they hunting? So I try and get into the animal's head, but I always try and establish where I am, imagine what I am. I'll most probably do this afterwards and prioritize on capturing the animal hunting, decide what speed. Do I want to keep energy? Do I want to really slow it down? Is there going to be more than one lion involved, or more than one cheetah involved? And trying to give myself, I don't want to compromise the hunt. It's a cheetah hunt. If I go behind the cheetah, I'm compromising the hunt because the gazelle is going to look at me and it's going to go. So I'm thinking about, right, I'm far enough away, I can get a shot of the cheetah looking at the gazelle. Now I'm going to move around because I want that cheetah coming straight down the barrel. So it's every single occasion. But if I'm on a long project, for instance, African Cats, working with the cheetahs, it wasn't really about the hunt, it was about the character. So I was always looking at what we could do to bring out the character of the animal as opposed to the mechanisms of a hunt, because hunting just gets a bit dull after a while. So I'm looking about how you can put behavior into a character. Does that make any sense?
No, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, what you're referencing is that in the hunt, the subject is the hunt, whereas if in another context, the subject's actually the cheetah, and that's very important
Correct.
to know.
Yeah. What
What
is
is
your context? Exactly. Are you about the behavior that they're actually doing, or are you about the personality or the character that you're filming? Or it's actually not difficult at all to understand. That was very well put.
I was very fortunate to one of my great mentors was Justin Maguire, who's actually in Cape Town at the moment. So we've been going for walks and things. I mean, I
Nice.
call him the man with the golden eye. He loves shooting, backlit. And it's something that
Yeah.
I just tell my everyone I'm working with is like never shoot with the sun behind you, right? Like just don't do it. But could you? I mean, you mentioned right at the beginning that light informs everything that you do. Can you maybe just unpack a little bit about your relationship with light, how it's evolved, and what advice would you give? Because you can't control the sun, right? But you can control your position relative to the sun.
You can control your position, and you can evokes such a different emotion the way you put light. And if I want to emotionally engage with an animal, the most important thing is about having light in its eyes. You've got to be able to see its eyes, whether that's a human, by the way. If you're filming a human, even in the darkest room, even in the darkest film you're watching, you'll see there the cinematographer, the DOP, has lit, so there is eyes. So eyes are always my consideration. But also it depends on what I'm trying to, what I'm feeling at the time and what I'm trying to convey. One of my favorite things to do is film in like, it's totally counterintuitive. I love backlit, rim lit, so shooting into the sun, but that's not emotional, that's beautiful. So that will capture the emotion, as in beauty makes you really feel, but it won't make you engage with the animal. What makes you engage with the animal is seeing that animal and the way the light is textured and on it. I love when you get in the Serengeti or the Masai Mara, most probably down, I've never been to South Africa. I know you get in Natosha, so you get it everywhere, but those incredibly massive localized storms with the dark, dark clouds behind. And then that gorgeous, like the light is, it's almost saffron. It's sort of, it ricochets, and if you put an animal in front of it, doesn't actually matter what animal, but say you've got a cheetah and you have that dark cloud. I remember once getting a cheetah coming up onto a termite mound, the dark cloud behind, and then lightning struck behind. The emotion that you create through that beauty. So my way of using light, the way I feel light, is very visceral. It's very again, I refer to Sammy, but he will absolutely tell you how mad I drive him when I see good light and trying to find something to film if whatever I'm filming isn't there. It's an innate drive, and it drives everyone bonkers, including myself, because it's physical. The reaction is physical to it, but I know exactly intuitively what to do with it. And also no light at all, an amazing torrential downpour and elephants just playing in mud. It's the way that light makes me feel as well. It doesn't have to be the beautiful golden light or the backlight. It's about using light to make you feel.
Yeah, no, you did
Not
right. I
very
mean,
specific.
you did right. I mean, that's exactly it. And clearly, when you're shooting an eye, you need light on the subject. The danger of being properly backlit, of course, is that it just becomes all kind of mystical
It's a
and
silhouette.
almost, yeah, a silhouette and almost done. So, I mean, you certainly can't do it at all times, but you can see the great cinematographers. I mean, light is absolutely fundamental. And while we can't light, we can fundamentally position ourselves relative to the light. So, yeah, it's
Completely.
really
And hope. I mean, there's always the thing, I'm sure you have this, but there's that perfect moment where, the demoiselle cranes are all just absolutely beautiful, or, they're coming into the frame and they're incredible. And you get into the absolute right position where you've got a little bit of light on the eye, but a side light, there's something bouncing off the other side of them. They're looking amazing. And then they move. And so you're constantly like tweaking and adjusting without disturbing them, which is really difficult. And if you're doing hide work, there is no tweaking. When you're setting your hide, you have to be so incredibly careful about where you are to get the best light. Have you seen the film The Velvet Queen? Vincent
no,
Muniz film? Please watch
no.
it. Anyone who's
Okay.
interested in cinematography, watch it.
Okay. Okay.
It's absolutely exquisite. His lighting is next level, extraordinary in the natural world.
Okay.
He's one of my influences. I think he's extraordinarily emotional with the way and he barely moves the camera as well. He sets up a frame, Rog, and then he lets everything move through it, which takes huge discipline and
It's
knowledge.
it's exactly the sort of leads me to the next question is what is your take in being someone who's a long lens? So you generally are on a tripod, right? So you're not moving geographical position, but you can pan and tilt and zoom. What is your take on movement, and how do you think about movement in the context of exactly what we've just discussed? I mean, what motivates you to move the camera as opposed to just locking it off?
Again, it's an instinctive reaction, but if I am if I've got an extraordinary frame, I was looking at a frame yesterday. I was showing some school kids some footage yesterday, and there's a shot in Bears, a Disney nature film. It's a big wide, and it's like the whole thing is like a molten metal color. There's the dark gray of the mountain behind, and then the water is lead, and it's almost the reflection is beautiful, but it's all one sort of shade of a very dark gray. And a bear is walking, tiny little bear is walking into the water, and you just see the specular highlights as it splashes, and it's like it's walking through liquid metal. And I don't move that frame at all because the bear is moving. That's the only thing I want. I want you to concentrate on that bear. But if I'm with a warthog or a hyena or whatever it might be, and I want you to be that animal, and therefore it's all about breathing with the animal and moving and giving them enough space to go into, making sure that whenever I'm moving with an animal, they're not up against a frame, they're not awkwardly placed, or unless I want them to feel uncomfortable, of course. But
Yeah.
I'm always like giving them space to go into, and I'm doing that thing which I'm sure you do. It's like, okay, right, I am the the wildebeest, and trying to channel them and just breathing with them and going, and if it amplifies and you start going into something moving really fast, whether that's a cheetah. Some of the shots I got on the phantom on the cheetah in the hunt, it's there. The opening shot of the hunt is a cheetah running. I was with Alistair Fothergill. He was in the car. I let him in the car. He's the boss, so you kind of have to. And he's great company, I have to say. But Alistair was there. I had a phantom, and we were following this one cheetah. Jamie was on the Cineflex, and the cheetah comes into frame, and I've got a post trigger on the phantom, so I've triggered the trigger at the end of the shot. But the cheetah comes into the Thompson gazelle comes into the frame. I go with the Thompson's gazelle. She's moving, she jumps, and then in the back of frame, out of focus, comes the cheetah. So I let the Thompson's gazelle, go out of frame. I let the cheetah come into frame, and then I go for a small amount with the cheetah. I let her out. I remember doing it, and Alistair's watching it on there. He said, "Could you play that back, Soph? Would you mind?" I'm like, "Yeah, play it back." And then he played it back, and then he started chatting, and I'm like, "Okay." And then he said the words, and the next time I heard those words was David Attenborough saying them over the opening of The Hunt. And It was just the movement. It was a big moment, but the movement was that decisive second where you went, or where I went, this is what feels right to me. And that's what makes a camera person. It's about making those decisions, when to let something go. It's as important as to when to follow or to when to let something into frame. And I think those are things I learned from Hugo. But also, I think you've got to have a bit of it innately as well, don't you?
Yeah, I think you do, but I mean, there's no doubt. I like to study, um, Roger Deakins. I mean, he started off in documentary cinematography. Like that's kind of where he started. So if you watch and you start to see the intention behind the way, often he'll hold a shot, and then the subject comes into frame, and then he moves with the shot, right?
Yeah,
So
because you always go on a movement. It's like when you throw focus. If I'm
exactly,
trying to
exactly.
engage with an animal, say I'm behind a zebra and behind it is another zebra. It's ridiculous. But I'm focused on the back of the zebra with its ears. And do you see that? That was my zebra impression. It was brilliant.
Yeah, very good, very good.
But I'm focused on that. But then if the zebra then moves, this zebra in the foreground moves its head, I can then throw focus to the other one. But you can't throw focus when there's no move because it doesn't work. So it's about timing and judging. And as you say, sometimes I'm not comparing myself to Deakins, although, sorry, it was the most exciting moment when I looked at the ASC roster and I realized that I am next to him on the roster.
Wow, you serious?
That was like, oh my good God, my hero. Yeah, exactly. Incredible. But it is, an animal will come into frame and you'll go, right, I'm making that decision consciously to follow that animal, and you have to make it smooth and you have to go with it. You're kind of like, right, I've made this choice, off we go. So it's like not faltering. Don't start and restart. Trust your gut and go with that movement.
And just a last sort of thing, because sadly we're pretty much out of time, but how do you feel when you watch your rushes at the end of the day?
I am always looking for the shot that I didn't get.
Yeah.
I'm always criticizing it to a very strong level, but I recognize when I've got something that's useful. And what I've learned is that shots that I didn't think are useful, the editor will love me for. So those dirty wipes where nothing's quite in focus, but things kind of go through frame really quickly, so useful. Or the detail, the cutaway. So I look at my rushes and I am my own worst critic. I'll hate them, but when a shot that's good comes along, I'll really enjoy it. And I'll be like, oh, we managed that. Sammy, look what we got. We got this great shot that really does everything we were trying to do. And I'll celebrate it. So
I think that's
it's
important.
usually
Yeah. Sorry,
going, oh God, what did I miss? What did I miss? Help.
Yeah. No, I think you did right. I mean,
I do that.
it's such a key thing as well that I try and actually show my rushes to people I'm working with, and then suddenly they go, "Jeepers, like the gap between me and you is actually not that great. You're making mistakes. This is not right. That's not right. This doesn't quite work."
Correct.
And I think I mean, very similar to you. I can't watch my rushes for we'll put it this way, I don't enjoy watching them until after about 3 months after the shoots. And then you sort of start to go, okay, that works, that kind of works. But I think that's a critical thing. And my last sort of question to you is, in terms of evolving your craft, what I love about cinematography is you never master it, right? It's always, you reach a level of competency. But I mean, what is your advice to people who are, just interested in cinematography? I mean, what advice can you sort of give them just in terms of evolving their passion for, capturing the natural world?
I think cutting your own footage is the most brutal and brilliant way of learning about what you're doing and getting other people to watch it and being honest about it. So having people who can honestly feed back. And also, I think for me, I love, like you, watching other cinematographers work. It's an amazing time of year right now. It's award season, so all the features are in and there's loads of screenings. One really great reason for being in London. And it means you get to go and see the craft. And every time I see a movie now, it slightly ruins the movie because you're like going, right, what's going on with the light there? What's going on here? But just always knowing that you can be better, not being complacent, and also you can always make a sequence stronger. So okay, I've done that, and that's great. But what would have elevated it to the next level? So, but I thrive on self-criticism. I don't think everybody else does. But I would say get out there and blooming do it. Tell your stories, but then really when you're cutting them, cut them economically, cut them fiercely, and push your rushes and push them and find the holes, and that will help you build better rushes.
Okay.
That is
fantastic stuff. We could chat for days, but I really appreciate your time and
my pleasure. Lovely. I've learned a lot from you, Roger. I mean, it's honestly, I remember seeing one of the shots that you did and just being like, oh my good God, how can you do that? Such skill, such craft. So a real delight. Thank you very much for asking me.
Awesome. Cool. Chat soon. Cheers, Soph.
Chat soon. Take care. Bye now.